Arcade sports style games have a wide appeal. They can be fun for people that have no idea how the rules work in the real sport, or they could be a somewhat relaxed way for hardcore fans to get into a video game version of the sport that they love. Now, Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey on the Nintendo 64 is a perfect example of this. Not only was it the first sports game on the platform, it was also the first game to offer 4-player support. For all of you out there with warm and fuzzy memories of the game, is Gretzky's 3D Hockey best left in the inner recesses of your brain, or is it still worth playing today? That's what I'm going to talk about here. Danny from the Famicast here. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Today, we're taking a look at Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey on the Nintendo 64. Here I'm going to be talking about the visuals, gameplay, performance, a touch on the Japanese release, and just hockey in general in Japan. I'll be the first to admit that, while yes, I was well aware of Gretzky's 3D Hockey on the platform back in the day, it was actually something I haven't tried out until quite recently. You know, I'm not the biggest hockey fan out there, but I would occasionally watch the sport back when I lived in America. Now, as for this game itself, there are a few options when it comes to modes, just to kind of get into things here. You can go to play game, which basically gets you right into the action like exhibition stuff, play season, and practice. Now, there are also options to view records, a variety of stats, including Wayne Gretzky's career stats, and setup where you can change a variety of in-game options. Now, before we move on to the gameplay, I should note that with the season, you do have some additional options here. You can play in arcade mode, which basically puts you against every team in each division to win. Kind of like, I mean, this was based on an arcade game, so it kind of makes sense that that would be included here. So, and yeah, with that, if you can do this arcade mode, if you lose, you can keep playing that team until you win. Now, you're also to play through an abbreviated 25-game season or a full 82-game season if you like. Gretzky 3D does offer a simulation option that allows for 3, 4, or 5 players per team. Now, while I think it's a good idea to try to tap into more simulation aspects of the sport, it really doesn't feel much different in my opinion. In one simulation style match that I had 5-on-5 hockey, I was in a shootout that ended in like a 22-17 finish. Not exactly simulation style hockey there, but, you know, still fun. Controls sound a little bit difficult at first, but they're actually pretty simple once you get the hang of things. So on offense, you can pass the puck with B and shoot with A or Z. Now, when a CPU-controlled player on your team has the puck, you can see this, it's kind of like a different color blue than what your active character is. You can still kind of decide what you want them to do. I mean, if you press B, they're going to pass it to you. If you press A, you're going to make it so they shoot, stuff like that. And like I said, if you want to switch to that player to be in control, all you have to do is just press R and boom, you're right there. Now, defense allows players to steal, check, and hook their opponents. Now, after a little bit of time with the game, you'll be flying around the ice, checking fools, fighting, and scoring goals here in no time. The visuals here are, well, they're very reminiscent of a 3D game made in 1996. Now, while the player models themselves definitely look the part overall, don't expect to come into this experience seeing clear representations of the on-ice players. Things here look very cookie-cutter, with there being minimal distinction between the faces and stuff like that. You can still see a little bit of a difference, but you're usually not in that close to see it. Uniforms and the general use of proper team logos and branding, it's pretty well done. And now, while the textures are a bit on the blurry side, they're clear enough to know what Midway was going for here. Now, on top of all this, the animations of the on-ice players look actually pretty good. Nice touches like water bottles flying off the goalie nets whenever they get hit with a puck. That's pretty cool, like, to have that level of detail even all those years later. Now, in terms of performance, the game really doesn't skip a beat either. It's running smoothly at pretty much all times, at least in the time that I played with it here. Now, I think that's extremely important too, given the high-speed, twitching nature of the game. Making sure the performance can keep up with it, that's definitely what's needed there. Now, before we move on to the Japan connection here with the game, I need to mention that although this game does offer up to 4-player support, not only that, it was the first N64 game to do this, like I said before, but that is actually one aspect of the game that I was unable to try out. Now, like many of you out there, I'm sure at this point in my life, it's a little bit more difficult to get friends over for the sole purpose of playing old school games. Still, I imagine it'd be a ton of fun, just and absolutely insane to have that number of people come over and be controlling that number of people on the ice. Yeah, multiplayer definitely would add some longevity to the title for sure. So, hockey isn't really a big deal in Japan, which is probably a surprise to no one. Now, while I think that people here know what the sport is in general, interest remains pretty low. Now, there was a Japan-only hockey league in Japan called the Japan Ice Hockey League, but that folded in 2004 as the remaining parties kind of joined other groups, and there's one big one that's called the Asia League Ice Hockey. Now, in this group, teams from Japan, Korea, and one from Russia, from what I've seen, they are part of this group. Now, I haven't seen any games myself, but that's something that's kind of on my bucket list, to watch a hockey game here in Japan. Now, as for Gretzky's 3D Hockey and its Japanese release, the game was released on February 28, 98, almost a year and a half after the initial American release in late 1996. Now, while Midway was involved in some fashion, publishing duties were billed to Game Bank, the guys responsible for publishing two other Midway titles on the platform, Doom 64 and Hexen. Now, just in case you're keeping score at home, these were the only 3 games that Game Bank published on the platform in Japan. And now, as for the localization, not much has really changed outside of adding Japanese text into the game. The audio here and play-by-play and all that stuff, that's still in English. And, given the lack of popularity for the sport to begin with, that was probably the right call for Game Bank to not dump a ton of money into the game for Japanese voice. Now, for all you collectors out there, this game isn't really that hard to find these days, even complete if you look hard enough. Now, I found my Japanese copy, for something like 1,000 yen, like USD $10. Heck, even the North American version I bought was not really that hard to come by, and it came with everything, the box manual and stuff like that. I think I found that bare bones at a local game shop while I was vacationing in the States back in 2018. If this is something that's not in your collection, it's definitely something that's available, so happy hunting out there, guys. Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey is a good example of a sports game done right. While it's relatively simple, there still is some depth included in the package with the season mode. Still, I'd probably venture to say players will likely find the most enjoyment out of this game with friends. It's relatively cheap and can make home parties with the right group of friends probably a lot of fun. As always, thanks you guys for checking out this video. If you like what you see, please feel free to give us a like. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications. We've got tons of podcasts, video reviews, retro content, special videos, and a whole lot more. Again, this is Danny from the Famicast. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later.